Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
It's a 1-hour Newsmaker today. Glad to have with us in the studio for this segment, Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. Chief Murray, thanks for coming up.
Thanks for having me.
And, well, you've got a lot going on in Hornell, Chief. You've got a new dog, a new K-9 unit. You have the new St. James Hospital opening up on March 17th, and then we got St. Patrick's Day this month, so lots to talk about today.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the community. We're particularly pleased with our new police dog.
What's the dog's name again?
Snitch.
And tell us about the new drug dog and where it's being used and how it's being used.
Well, he's primarily a drug detection type dog. He's also used for tracking purposes, but he's a non-aggressive dog. We decided not to get a dog that was going to be aggressive at all. So he's the type of dog that we can bring into schools and we could bring into community events, and we don't have the issue of his aggressiveness.
When the dogs do go into a school, presumably I'm thinking that they're going to be checking out lockers. Do you have to go through the usual, get a warrant from a judge first, or how does that work?
No, in the school setting, we do bring the dogs in, and generally we'll bring in more than one dog because there's so many lockers in the school areas. So we'll coordinate with other agencies. So our dog would be tasked to do a particular area. Other dogs would be doing other areas, and it's just a general outside the locker type search, and else they hit on something, and then the school has the authority to go into lockers and check the contents of the lockers.
Yes, and the reason I'm asking is because I was just thinking to myself, a locker really isn't the student's private property. In a certain sense, it is, in that he wouldn't want other students, rummaging through his locker or his or her locker. But at the same time, it's also school property, so you could just bring the dogs in and they go where they go and they sniff what they sniff and they notice, what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anyone should think that that's a private property issue. Yeah.
No, it wouldn't be. Talking to Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray on the topic of drugs, the new criminal justice reforms, how's that affecting Hornell Police in terms of arrests?
We're continuing our drug enforcement just like we have. We really haven't stopped, or we haven't pulled back at all in regards to our drug enforcement. We're still doing it, but of course it is difficult for us because of the new discovery laws. We can't really make arrest on the regular basis that we were, because there is a time period where we don't have our lab reports. So there's times when we will actually do search warrants, and we did one just last week where we end up doing a search warrant, but at the conclusion of it, because of the discovery laws, we basically leave the people go, and then later on we'll take care of criminal charges after we get the results of the lab results.
Do you think that that's going to change the new bail reform laws? Do you think that the governor will rethink that issue?
I'm certainly hoping so. I don't think it's been a good thing, particularly for people that have an issue with drugs, because it doesn't really put them in a place where they can immediately get away from the drugs, and that was always something that I saw as a positive effect of having a jail system that we could utilize in that effect. But most of our local politicians are certainly behind us in regards to changing that back to a degree. But unfortunately, because of the politics, they really don't have a seat at the table, it seems like.
Upstate Republicans versus the downstate New York City politicians. The New York City Democrats are dominating these days.
Right, and there just doesn't seem to be a seat at the table. So although they'll agree with us, I don't know how effective that is at this point.
Talking to Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. On the topic of drugs, Narcan, it seems that not a whole lot of time ever passes without hearing from the public safety meetings that someone's life was saved by the use of Narcan from a Hornell police officer. Anything new there?
Well, unfortunately, we've been having some recent deployments of Narcan, and we've saved several lives recently just with the deployment of it. Because unfortunately, what we're seeing is that this fentanyl, which is a deadly drug, and this carfentanil, which is a concentrated form of that, we are starting to see some of that in drugs. We used to just see it in heroin type drugs, but now we're seeing it in the methamphetamine type drugs. So people that are using methamphetamine, although it's got different physiological results that it does to your body, they are mixing it together, and we're finding that more and more. So unfortunately, we are finding people that are in need of the Narcan because of the increased fentanyl in the methamphetamines.
Can you give us a number and how many lives were saved, Chief?
I think we've had like 4 of them within the last 4 weeks.
Okay. Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray, our guest today. The resurgence in fentanyl, do you have a sense of where the fentanyl, when it gets into the Hornell area, where it's coming from? Is it coming from Rochester? Is it coming from the more Corning or Pennsylvania area? Do you have a sense of that?
There's different sources. Different people have different sources, but yeah, I mean, we really do have a good ideal of exactly where they're going, and when we interview people, they'll give us a lot of the information actually about where the sources are. So we're seeing a lot of it coming actually from the Jamestown area as of recent, but of course Rochester is a big area that it comes from. In the Elmira Corning area, we do see some coming from that direction also. But it seems to be the sources seem to be very, very large in the larger communities.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Fortunately, I think that we've been able to keep it to a degree where I don't think that we have anybody with any large amounts. I could be wrong on this, of course, but I think our intelligence is pretty good. So for the most part, we're seeing people that are getting it, bringing it back, using it themselves, or splitting it up amongst a small group of people.
It kind of caught my attention when you said Jamestown. Is this the first time that you remember serious drugs coming out of Chautauqua County area?
We've seen that probably for the last about 2 years, that we've seen methamphetamine actually coming from that direction.
Okay, interesting. And do you have a sense of where it's coming from before it reaches Jamestown?
I think that a lot of the people are actually making that trip all the way to Jamestown, back to the city. Although there's places in between, obviously, that there's drop-offs and such, but a lot of people are going directly to that area.
Interesting. Talking to Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. Chief, we'll get back to the topic of drugs. The new hospital opening up on March 17th. Recently we had on the show St. James CEO Brian O'Donovan. He talked about how on March 17th at 7:59 a.m., they have it all mapped out at 7:59 a.m., the old St. James on Canisteo Street closes, and at 8 a.m., 1 minute later, the new St. James will open up in the old Kmart Plaza area. Wondering what's I know the ambulance crew very involved with this. What will Hornell Police's role be in the transition period here?
Well, we're going to assist in any way we can as far as the transition of patients and drugs up to the new facility. However, the new hospital is going to be it's outside the city boundaries of Hornell, so our role in the new hospital is going to be limited. In the past at St. James Hospital, not only did we take on a role of police, but we did a lot of things for them that I think were security based too within their hospital. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to continue that.
So when the let's say there's a drunk or drugged driving incident, if it happens in Hornell city limits, would state police or the sheriff's department or North Hornell Village Police get involved at the hospital in the going to the ER with the suspect, or how would that work?
Well, the new hospital is not going to be in the city limits.
Right.
So, are you talking about the new?
Well, I was thinking, if there's an accident, drug or drunk related or otherwise, if there's an accident and for whatever reason, law enforcement, an accident that originates in Hornell, would Hornell police go into the ER?
If there's any crimes that are committed in Hornell, we would go up to the hospital to investigate the crimes that happened in the city of Hornell. Yes.
Okay,
but I'm talking about if there was an event that occurred at the hospital.
Right.
We thought we didn't know what role we'd have, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to have much of a role in regards to the new hospital. The sheriff has indicated that, and the state police have indicated that they are going to take care of any issues up there. So our role, like I say, and else it changes. We're not going to have much of a role, I don't believe, in regards to responding to events at the hospital.
Sure thing. We're talking with Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. And when we get back, we're going to talk about Trivia Night coming up on March 21st and also St. Patrick's Day and other issues. Stay with us.
I am a non-attorney spokesperson representing a team of lawyers who help people that have been injured or wronged. If you've been involved in a serious car, truck, or motorcycle accident or injured at work, you have rights and you may be entitled to money for your suffering. Don't accept an offer you get from an insurance company until you talk to a lawyer. And we represent some of the best personal injury lawyers you can find. Tough lawyers that will fight to win your case. And they're so good they stake their reputation on it by only getting paid if you win. So if you've been in a serious car, truck, or motorcycle accident or hurt on the job, find out today for free what kind of compensation you may be entitled to. Call the legal helpline right now.
800-791-4478. 800-791-4478. 800-791-4478. That's 800-791-4478.
You make sure his toys don't have any sharp edges. You taught her what to do when the smoke alarm goes off and to wear a helmet when she rides her bicycle. You do so much to keep your child safe. But are you using the right car seat for your child? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Protect your child's future at every stage of life. For information on the right seat for your child, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat.
Sponsored by the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee.
And it's a 1-hour Newsmaker show today on with Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. Dr. Gary Ostrog coming up at his usual time of 8:30. Police Chief Murray, you've got St. Patrick's Day. You've got Trivia Night coming up on March 21st. Let's talk about those, starting out with Trivia Night.
Yeah, with our new dog, it's the Maple City Police Club is putting together a Trivia Night in correspondence with Wegmans and the Main Place to come up with funding for our canine unit. And again, we do have the canine, and we've got him paid for, but the canine unit requires a specialized vehicle, which we're trying to those clubs are attempting to get donations so that we'll have that unit so that our unit will be up full and running. So.
St. Patrick's Day, I see coming up a week from this Saturday, on Saturday, March the 14th in Hornell.
Yep, we're going to have it on the 14th this year, so it won't interfere with the hospital movement at all. But hopefully we'll have great weather for it, and we usually have a real good turnout for our parade and events throughout the day.
Talking with Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. Getting back to the topic of drugs, which we said we would. You say that there's a resurgence in fentanyl. There's been 4 recent situations where a person's life was saved by Narcan, the Hornell Police Department using Narcan. When I believe a few years ago when Narcan first became popular, they found that a lot of people who were suffering from addiction problems kept Narcan around the house just in case when they were using fentanyl. Do you find that that's still the case, that there's fentanyl around the homes of people who are addicts?
Yeah, I mean, we do go into houses and we will find that they do have the vials there for utilization. Unfortunately, if someone has to be there to administer it, and sometimes that's not the case. But it doesn't. It works very effectively at times, but we've also had cases where we've used Narcan on individuals, and the second or third time out, it didn't work, and unfortunately the people.
The effect wears off after a while. They've used it too many times.
Well, I'm no doctor, and I don't really know the ins and outs of that, but I do know that that's what we're being told, that the effectiveness diminishes upon frequent use.
Something very important. I guess I'd say to keep in mind, and I say that as a warning kind of thing for those who are taking that risk of playing around with fentanyl. Talking to Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. You mentioned earlier, and this is something new that I'm hearing, that a lot of the drugs these days, more serious hard drugs, as we say, are coming out of Chautauqua County in the Jamestown area, and that people from the Hornell area are driving back and forth to and from Jamestown to pick up their drug supply of illegal drugs. I'm guessing you're in contact with Jamestown area law enforcement when these situations arise, Chief?
Yes, we have my investigator Tom Maini usually is in touch with them, and I know he's got a couple of connections in that area that he talks to on a regular basis. That
because normally I would think of Rochester. We think of it. I say we, those of us outside of law enforcement, we would always think of Rochester, maybe the Corning area being the big hub. Besides Rochester, Corning, and now Jamestown, are there other areas where drugs are coming out of, Chief?
I'm sure there are, but I don't really. Those are probably the premier areas when we're talking to people that they're being vetted into Hornell. Like I say, fortunately, I don't think that we have anybody in the Hornell area that's housing a large amount of drugs, or that we're a distribution point for other areas, which is great, and I think that it speaks well of our enforcement efforts.
As far as DWIs go, how's that recently? And when I say recently, I mean, say, over the last 6 months or so. What do you find in the wintertime versus the summertime for DWIs?
Well, I think they go down in the winter months usually, because I don't think there's as many people out and about as there is in the summertime. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because just for the 4th of July, I know a lot of people like to go out and consume alcohol, and we will have extra patrols out on St. Patty's Day. So I would certainly we want people to go out and have a good time, but I want them to be responsible.
Sure.
And of course not drink and drive. We don't want to see that. We will have extra vehicles out there enforcing it. So please make arrangements before you start your celebrations with rides and such.
Talking to Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray as we wind down here on our 8 to 8:30 segment. Dr. Gary Ostrauer coming up at 8:30 here on his regular time slot on the Newsmaker show. Chief, I want to get back to something you mentioned about fentanyl. You said that a lot of times when you're making a fentanyl arrest or dealing with someone under the influence of fentanyl, they'll tell you where they got it. Do you find that when people are on fentanyl, whether it's mixed with heroin or methamphetamines, do you find that fentanyl makes the drug user a little bit more talkative?
It does on some occasions, and sometimes it doesn't. But most of the times when we have people that are talking, they realize that they've just had a life experience where they almost died. And in those circumstances, a lot of people will talk to us, and they'll at that particular point realize what they're into, and want to change their life. So we do get them talking about where the drugs came from, and hopefully we try to get people at that point into some type of a treatment issue also. So we do try to bring in treatment people. And we've got a new program that Captain Sexsmith has been working on, whereby we're going to, when we do go into any type of a drug house, we're going to bring in people outside of law enforcement that for the treatment purposes. Because rather than just leaving the person there and filing charges later on, we would like to introduce them into some type of a treatment.
We've been speaking with Hornell Police Chief Ted Murray. We are out of time. Want to thank the Chief so much for coming up to the studios this morning.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me up.
And we'll continue with Dr. Gary Ostrauer in just a moment. It's the Newsmaker Show on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.
Right now, it's a good market for you.